Thank you for joining us to celebrate Latinx and Hispanic Heritage Month. I'm your host, Ines Ferre. Today, we want to welcome leaders from the Latinx and Hispanic community to discuss family, culture, politics, media, and music. At a pivotal political time in Texas where women's rights are being questioned, what are lawmakers doing? We're joined by Joaquin Castro. And as Latin music continues to dominate the Billboard charts, Anuel joins us to discuss the evolution of the genre, including reggaeton and trap. And in film and TV, when audiences are clamoring, screaming for content that they can identify with, we'll speak with two stars who will tell us why all of this matters. Plus, we'll talk about the importance of building generational wealth and the harsh financial impact of COVID-19 on those in the Latinx and Hispanic community. But first, we want to welcome Mark Hugo Lopez, Director of Global Migration and Demography Research at Pew Research. Also, Ariana Davis, Senior Director of Editorial and Strategy for Oprah Daily, as well as the author of What Would Frida Do? A Guide to Living Boldly. And Ed Morales, Columbia University lecturer, as well as the author of Latinx, The New Force in American Politics and Culture. Ed, let's start with you. Today's America has more citizens celebrating their Latinx and Hispanic heritage than ever before. The latest census shows the number of Latinx and Hispanic people have surpassed 60 million in the U.S. That makes up about 19% of the U.S. population. What has been the biggest impact, do you think, of such a huge population growth?
Well, I think more attention to the community because people of Latin American descent have been contributing to American politics and culture, going back to the 19th century and even before that. So the idea that demographic figures can drive conversation is key to us be able to state who we are and where we're going.
And Mark, the latest Pew research shows that only about 1 in 4 people who identify as Hispanic have heard of the term Latinx. Only about 3% use it to describe themselves. So what is exactly Latinx, and why is a term that some consider divisive? How is it divisive if it is?
It's a great question. So first, a little bit about Latinx. It's a term that's meant to be inclusive of the histories and the backgrounds of people of many different genders, for example, but also inclusive of the many different stories that make up the people in this population that we're talking about. Latinx also has been around for a while. It came out in the 1990s as part of, again, a broader movement to be more inclusive of the stories about people who are of women, of men, people who may be of a particular gender. It's meant to be all-encompassing and inclusive in a number of ways. And that's why I think you see many celebrities, companies, universities, news media organizations using the term Latinx. But what is interesting is that when you ask the public itself, our survey from 2019 showed that most people in the population haven't heard of the term, and that it's a term that if they have heard of it, many are not actually using it to describe their own identity. I think that's an important point to keep in mind, that the population it's meant to describe is largely unaware of the term's use. I would also point out, by the way, that it is an alternative to Hispanic and it is an alternative to Latino. So when we talk about this population with a pan-ethnic term like Hispanic, Latino, or Latinx, those are competing terms meant to describe the same group for the most part.
Ariana, I'd want your take on this as well. In your book, What Would Frida Do? You talk about really living boldly, and the book is geared towards new generations. So how do you think Latinx and Hispanic Americans have changed over generations and how they identify themselves?
I think the key in identity is I think that identity really is personal. And so my philosophy is always, however you personally want to identify. I personally still identify as Latina, but as a journalist and as a writer, I use Latinx because I want to be as inclusive as possible. And I think that in today's times, what takes priority when it comes to talking about large groups is being as inclusive as possible, making sure you're not excluding anyone. But language is always evolving. Terms are always going to be evolving. Hispanic is a phrase that people are no longer using as much because it was created by the government. So I think it's really personal what you personally prefer to be called. And I think, just trying to keep up with what the latest phrases are so that you can be as inclusive as possible is always important as well.
It's interesting that you said that I was born in Argentina. I came here when I was 7, and I identify as Hispanic American because I'm American. I mean, I have a U.S. passport now. Do you think that as generations pass by, that identity also changes? I mean, these terms that we're seeing now, will they be changing in the future as well? Mark?
It's a great point, and that's exactly what's happened. So the term Hispanic comes out of the 70s. Latino comes out of the 1990s as a term to describe the population. And Latinx, while also out of the 90s, has only recently generated enough traction to be used widely by a significant number of people to be noticeable. That only goes to show you that these terms do evolve. The choices and preferences of the population do change, even when it comes to racial identity in America. We've been changing the way we ask about racial identity since the 1790s. And so it's important to keep in mind that none of this is set in stone. These things do change. But I do want to add one data point that we've found in our surveys over the last 20 years, which is that when it comes to a preference for a term, and even more recently when Latinx is put up against Hispanic and Latino, you find that the majority of Latino adults, or I'm sorry, the majority of adults in this population prefer Hispanic. Second most preferred term is Latino, and then Latinx is preferred by only 4% of the population to describe the population itself. So Hispanic hasn't gone away. Hispanic continues to be a term that's used by a significant share, if not the majority of the population, to describe itself.
And identities within the Latinx and Hispanic community also vary so much. And Afro-Latinos speak out a lot about racism within the community. I'm wondering, how do we tackle the discrimination against Latinx and Hispanics within the American culture if there's also discrimination within the Latinx and Hispanic community itself? Ariana?
I think that's one of the things I think we get really lost when we talk about these labels and we talk about names and Latinx versus Latino versus Hispanic, when there's a lot of deeper issues within the community. And I think that what we're calling each other, what we call ourselves, it really pales in comparison to the importance of making sure that there is love and passion and compassion for all of the races within Latino. There are Black Latinos, there are white Latinos. That's just a fact. And so I think that a lot of it is just semantics. I think the labels don't matter as much as what we're actually doing in our community to make sure that we're embracing all races within that community as well.
Ed, your final thoughts on this?
Well, with respect to the last issue that you raised, the Latino community has to do self-examination of, the impact of Spanish colonialism on their attitudes towards race, and come more to grips in that. For a long time, Latinos have felt like they couldn't be racist because there was so much racism directed towards them. But we have to examine what goes on in our own families and our own communities, and try to center the experiences of African and Indigenous people.
Ed, Mark, Ariana, thank you so much for that thoughtful conversation. We have so much more to talk about as we celebrate the contributions of Latinx and Hispanic communities, including the exploding popularity of Latin music. But first, on the other side of this break, we'll first talk about the importance of representation in television and film. You don't want to miss it. Stick around.
I'm just all about, living life to the fullest. Wherever I play, I go big. In the stadium or Yahoo Fantasy.
Draft day, baby. You're going down this year, my friend. First pick right here. Gutless. Did you even want to win this year?
With the third pick, Team Juju selects.
Bro.
You're a fourth-round pick at best.
Man, your season's over. You're done.
Yeah, keep talking.
Who are these vagabonds, and what have they done with my children?
I'm Peter Pan. And I'm Alice from Wonderland.
We can all use a little extra courage now and then.
It's not time to grow up.
Come away. Rated PG. Rent or own the latest movies with Verizon Fios On Demand.
She was a Silicon Valley superstar who promised to revolutionize healthcare with a single drop of blood.
This is a change in the world that I want to see.
Now her world has crumbled. Her company, once valued at $9 billion, shuttered, and Elizabeth Holmes herself facing criminal charges for fraud.
To a certain degree, she's a victim.
What went so terribly wrong?
Elizabeth Holmes was made possible by a broader culture.
Who or what is to blame?
The distinction between fraud and visionary is very subtle here.
Welcome to Influencers. I'm Andy Serwer.
Individuals have to become financially literate.
Maybe there is a path forward.
This is an incredible moment in American history.
We have a time where people are actually talking about things they've never talked about before.
Look at the trajectory of humankind.
You can have honesty and transparency as a value.
The more you get done, the more opportunity you're going to be given.
Stick around long enough, you'll see everything in markets.
Welcome back. As we celebrate Latinx and Hispanic heritage, it's important to recognize the success of members within the community, but also to draw attention to the lack of representation in TV and film, both in front of and behind the camera. For more, we want to bring in our next guest. Starring in everything from Selena to the TV show George Lopez, actress Constance Marie. Also, you may know her from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, actress Melissa Fumero. Melissa, let's start with you. You star in Brooklyn Nine-Nine as Amy Santiago, a Hispanic detective who eventually becomes a department chief within the NYPD. I'm curious, what voice did you have in the growth of that character?
I would say quite a bit. You know, our creator and showrunner, Dan Gore, was and is a very collaborative type of creative. And he would often include me in, you know, where he thought he saw Amy going on her journey. And, you know, part of the reason I was so excited to be part of this show from the beginning was it was, you know, the legacy of Parks and Rec in that they grow their characters and they don't keep them in the same place professionally and personally. So I knew that would be the case with Brooklyn, and it was. You know, Amy is not the same woman she is when we first meet her in season 1. So yeah, when he, especially when it came to like crossroads professionally and personally for the character, he would often include me in those conversations and ask what I thought.
And speaking of representation within TV and film, the Latinx and Hispanic community make up about 5.3% of broadcast TV roles. That was in 2018 to 2019. And in the big screen, representation was also underrepresented, with only 4.6% of movie roles in 2019 going to people who identify as Latinx or Hispanic. Constance, I want to ask you, because you've had a long and successful career in both television and film, and I'm curious as to your experience as a Latina in Hollywood and the evolution of casting and representing Latin women in the screen.
Hi, happy to be here. Yeah, in 33 years, I've watched it go through many incarnations. I'm from an age when anytime there was a role in television or a movie, it was presumed that every role was white unless specified, that they would see, it would be called creative casting. And that has changed a tremendous amount. There are much more opportunities, but it goes in cycles. And I haven't figured out in all this time who decides the cycles. My very first acting opportunity in 1988 was when they decided to have the female lead instead of a white person. They were going to go with a Latin woman. They had a diversity of the people auditioning, and I ended up getting it. And we went through a period where everybody was comfortable seeing brown faces in certain roles. And then there was a time when all of a sudden we were not so hot anymore. And I don't know why those waves happen, but I do know that when they do happen and the opportunities happen, now with internet and YouTube and all that, we can create our own content. We can write our own things. We can star in our own things, and we can pitch them. We can give them a pre-packaged thing that we will show somebody how amazingly talented Latins are, Latinx, Hispanics, all of us are, and we can pitch it to them. We can show them and then cut out a lot of the guesswork. It's sadly, we have to be better. We have to be more tenacious, and we have to claim our space constantly.
And Melissa, do you feel that representation also has to be at the decision-making table? I mean, on the executive level, producer level, there's not enough representation there. Will that make for more Latinos to be on the big screen or on the small screen?
Yeah, 100%. You know, I think we have a real pipeline problem right now. We don't have enough writers. We don't have enough producers. We don't have enough decision makers. You know, one thing I've been noticing at like the streamers for these Latinx projects, they're often under like the diversity branch of a streamer or an international branch of a streamer. And a lot of times that also means smaller budgets. You know, we really need to be, I think, loud about how underrepresented we are in television and film, and not just in general, but also in terms of budgets. You know, our shows are low budget, our movies are low budget. We need to see Latinos in all forms of the medium and in different genres, you know, and it really, we need more training programs. We need to open the door for hiring more creatives behind the camera. You know, I've been getting into directing comedy a bit more lately, and there's really like 2 other Latinas that are directing half-hour comedies, and it's crazy. It blows my mind. So, you know, we have to create more opportunities to have, I think, more of us at the table, because it's not just in front of the camera. You know, we need more executives. And even if they aren't there now, we need the executives that are there willing to say yes and greenlight these projects and give them the budgets that they deserve or require. And, you know, just a lot more needs to be done.
And Constance, why is it important to see more people like you on the screen? Why is this important for the younger generation as well?
Well, it's interesting is because when I started, I only saw Latinos in the victim role, where it was the recent immigrant who would need to be rescued. And I thought to myself, I actually asked my mom at one point, where are the Latinos like us? Like, that are just American born, and we have the culture, but we're part of the melting pot. And she couldn't tell me. And my family traces back all the way to 1850 in America. And everybody, when I got into show business, is when I realized, oh, I must be super brown, because everybody always asks me where I'm from. And I'm from Los Angeles, right? When you look at the names, we've been here forever. So one of the things that I chose to do for myself is I only participated in projects that I felt like reflected us in a positive light. And that could be career suicide over decades, but it was a conscious choice, because I felt like if I was constantly in a project that was belittling my culture and belittling the accomplishments of women, that I was aiding that whitewashing and that sort of contributing to the self-loathing that might happen if you never see yourself reflected in a positive light. And when I got the opportunity for the George Lopez show, it was so unstereotypical that I felt for the very first time I could just be a mom in America who happened to be brown. And the commonalities that we had and universal themes that we have really transcended and went through the airwaves. I mean, so many people of color, white people, Latin people, we all watched it. We all felt included in the melting pot, and we got away without it being cliche, because it was based on George's life, who lived in Toluca Lake, who married a Cuban woman. You know what I mean? And it was a reality that had not been reflected to America, that we were just part of the melting pot and we were part of America, well-established America. And I think that that is very important, that we continually fight for those roles for our future generations, my daughter, other children. Some of the projects that I'm working on right now, With Love, with Gloria Calderon-Kellett, who is a force to be dealt with, which is just a Latino family. And we have gay, we have trans, we have Colombians, we have Mexicans, we have Spanish, we have no Spanish, awkward Spanish, because it's not a gene. You don't grow up speaking Spanish if you're here in America for multiple generations. I went to Berlitz, for God's sakes. So I think it's very, very important. And I had a conversation with a producer once who, this was in the early 90s. And he was telling me about how he thought this was a white producer, and he thought Denzel Washington was a very angry Black man because he was angry that African-American, this was that long ago. He was upset that he could not get cast in a romantic comedy, in a Black romantic comedy, why there was not those opportunities. And he looked me dead in the face and said, Constance, they don't do well, so we don't make them. And I looked him right back in his face and said, how many white romantic comedies are made that don't do well? And he said, well, they don't all do well. And I said, right, but you don't stop making them. So if you're willing to take a risk and fund other projects that are not specifically, no ethnic specific, well, if one doesn't do well, then you just decide the genre is closed. So that's why when George Lopez was on the air, it was the only sitcom with Latino people speaking English to make it over 13 episodes in 75 years of television history. That's not okay.
Wow. And speaking of more productions, Melissa, how do productions like In the Heights, the Spielberg remake of West Side Story that's coming out in 2021, why are these important for the industry, for the representation of Latinx and Hispanics in Hollywood?
I mean, they're incredibly important. And I think, to the point that was just being made is like, we just, In the Heights was so amazing because it's about New York and it's about a slice of life. And, it's not about us being criminals or, all the cliches. And it was a $50 million big studio movie. So that was a huge moment. And, we also, the same point, like it just all needs to keep being made, and even if the metrics are not, I was very frustrated with the way people talked about how In the Heights performed, but it was also released on streaming the same day and during a pandemic, and it's a musical. And, it's like, why are we, anyway, I could go on forever about that, but they are huge because they're both big budget movies, and we need more of that. And we need to understand that it's important and it speaks to our community, and our community is showing up. We are the largest share of like movie ticket buyers and consumers of television and movies, and we like to see ourselves. We come to see those movies and shows. So the pressure just has to stay loud and stay constant, so that more things get greenlit and more things get made.
Melissa, Constance, thank you so much for joining us for that conversation. And coming out, we'll have more tips for you on how to grow your personal finances. But first, we're going to discuss the political power of the Latinx and Hispanic community, if it's fully being represented in DC and across the country. You're not going to want to miss that. Stick around.
I'm gonna call you Spirit. See the all-new movie that has families cheering for more.
Spirit.
Spirit. Spirit. Let's run! I smell rule breaking. No!
Spirit Untamed, the movie, is spectacular and the perfect family film.
I made us something.
When did you have the time?
There's always time for friendship-based crafting.
Spirit Untamed.
Rent or own the latest movies with Verizon Fios On Demand.
The waterman is still living up by the lake, searching for his wife so he could bring her back from the dead.
This book says that he's immortal. I need to know more about it.
No one knows where to find him except me.
Hope is a powerful force. It made you see me.
Rent or own the latest movies with Verizon Fios On Demand.
The best investment you can make is in yourself.
We are sliding more into the red.
There's still a lot of unknowns here.
Want to get to some breaking news.
This is a look into the future.
Another day, another record for the S&P 500 and the Dow.
I always look forward to doing this interview because it's like real stuff.
I always learn so much watching your show. Thank you.
I guess we're just as nerdy as you are.
Nobody can take it away from you.
Welcome back to celebrating Latinx and Hispanic Heritage Month. We thought we'd spend some time looking at representation in politics. I'm joined now by Joaquin Castro, representative of Texas's 20th District in the House of Representatives since 2013. Cecilia Munoz, former director of White House Domestic Policy Council under President Obama, and Angel Taveras, first Hispanic mayor of the city of Providence, Rhode Island. Pleasure to have you all with us. Joaquin, I'll start with you. Despite being the largest ethnic or racial minority group in the U.S., at 19% of the population, there is a shockingly low number of Latinx and Hispanic representatives in the political arena. How does this lack of representation in Washington impact the Latinx and Hispanic community?
I think it impacts it in just about every way that you could imagine. Look, there is good news that the Latino population is now close to 19% of the country, so almost 1/5 of the country. And also, it is thriving in states and communities that we don't often think of as Latino communities, not just in the big states like Texas and California and Florida and New York, but also in places like Nebraska and South Carolina and Minnesota. And yet, Latinos make up a small fraction of the total of elected officials nationwide. So we have to do more to invest in our communities and in candidates running for offices up and down the ballot, from Congress to school board member and beyond. And that will make a difference in our policy in education, in healthcare, in economic development, and all of the things, immigration, that Latinos care about.
Angel, in the most recent analysis by the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials, approximately 1% of elected officials identify as Latinos. So what really needs to change to bring these numbers up both nationally and also on a local level?
Well, it's something that we have to work on. And the way I look at it is this way. A lot of people say that they won't get involved in the process because there's not someone who speaks to them. And unfortunately, a lot of the candidates, we focus on the people who vote. So we need to make sure that we speak to the voters out there and that we are clear about why elections are important and how it impacts their lives on a daily basis. And as mayor, I think that was one of the things that I was very fortunate about, was being able to explain to people how important it was that they participate, how important it was that they have a mayor that had experienced similar things, who had gone through the public schools, who had the son of immigrants, who spoke Spanish, who understood some of the challenges that we were facing. And because of that, I was able to bring in some new people into the process and increase our voter turnout. And as that that happens, more and more elected officials, more and more candidates pay attention to the folks who have voted before. So it's about having candidates who reflect the community, increasing voter turnout, and that will in fact help elect even more candidates who reflect the community.
And Cecilia, a common misconception of Latinx and Hispanic immigration is that it will turn the country blue, because in the past 2 elections, the Latinx and Hispanic vote increased from 28% of those identifying as Latinx or Hispanic voting for Trump in 2016 to 38% voting for Trump in 2020. The vote is definitely not monolithic. So what are the key issues that are really important to the Latinx and Hispanic voters?
Well, there's so many misconceptions that affect how the political class sees our community. I agree with what the mayor just said, that we tend to get invested in every 4 years rather than consistently over the course of every year. And so too many of us are disconnected from the political process altogether. We feel like outsiders in the United States, and too many of us behave as if we were outsiders to the political system. So that's actually the biggest challenge. And I think unfortunately, the misconception about immigration, which is of course and obviously a really important issue for our community, is that too many people in the political class in the media think it's the only issue that matters to our community. And they frame us as if 100% of us were immigrants, and discount the fact that we care about what happens in the economy. We care about whether or not we have access to health care, whether or not we're in quality jobs, like all of the economic issues that Americans worry about, our community worries about. But too many folks in politics think of us as a community where you got to show up every 4 years, you speak a little Spanish, talk a little bit about immigration, and then you're done. And that's way insufficient.
Joaquin, Texas is going through now an important political time. You have that abortion law that was recently passed, banning abortions after 6 weeks. I know you've spoken out against that law. What will the impacts be on the Latinx and Hispanic community in Texas because of that law?
Well, you have many Latinas who may not have the funds to travel to California, Arizona, or somewhere else if they're seeking to get an abortion, who are going to be directly impacted by this law. And look, within the Latino community, there's a lot of opinions about abortion and the right to abortion. But the numbers show it, that most people think that forcing a woman to have the child of her rapist is very far right and cruel. And so this is something that Latinos have a strong opinion of in Texas, and they think that it's overkill.
And just to follow up on that, do you think other states will follow suit with that law?
That's a great question, an important question. I suspect that there will be other states that will pursue a similar law. I did see, for example, the governor of Florida talk about how he didn't want to turn citizens against each other, for example, which is a main piece of that law. It encourages citizens to file lawsuits against women and others if a woman has had an abortion after 6 weeks. And so, yes, I think that other states will try to follow suit. I hope that ultimately the Supreme Court will rule that the law is unconstitutional.
Cecilia, as we look into next year, the midterm elections, what are going to be some of the biggest issues for Latinx and Hispanic voters going into the 2022 midterm?
Jobs and the economy, the educational system, the healthcare system, the extent to which we are actually reached by those systems effectively, and whether or not the economy works for us is going to be central. Immigration will continue to be an issue. Right now, the community is reeling from the decision made by the parliamentarian in the Senate last night that may make it difficult to have a vote on legalizing Dreamers, for example. That stuff really matters, but the core issues that affect our community day in and day out continue to be around jobs and the economy, and frankly, about basic respect, right? The notion that only just over half of us participate in elections, if even that in some cases, just means that we are still perceiving ourselves as outsiders. We're still not being talked to by folks in the political class. We're still not being covered adequately by the media. There is a whole host of things which needs to change in order for us to assume our full place and become the full power that we really need to be in order to shape this country.
And Angel, what do you tell young Latinx and Hispanic change makers who are contemplating getting into politics?
To do it. We absolutely positively need more people running for office, more Latinos, Latinas to be part of it. I'm proud that we're in Rhode Island. We have a Latina lieutenant governor here in the state. We have mayors in the state. We have elected officials, state senators, state representatives, city council people, and it's great to have seen that happen over the last 20 years. But I encourage people, elections are decided by who shows up. That's not just the voters, it's also the candidates. Elections are choices, and we need to provide good choices. And so if you're interested in running, I try to encourage people to do it and to be helpful, and I try to be helpful in any way that I can.
A big thank you to our guests for that lively conversation. Coming up next, we look at the exploding popularity of Latin music and including a big star on the Billboard charts, Anuel. He'll join us too. Stick around on the other side of this break.
Welcome to Influencers. I'm Andy Serwer.
Individuals have to become financially literate.
Maybe there is a path forward.
This is an incredible moment in American history.
We have a time where people are actually talking about things they never talked about before.
Look at the trajectory of humankind.
You can have honesty and transparency as a value.
The more you get done, the more opportunity you're going to be given.
Stick around long enough, you'll see everything in markets.
I've been running my own gym for a little over 3 years now.
What's up, brother?
There is no better feeling than when you change someone's life for the better. I started investing to put money back into my business. I use Yahoo Finance to research and stay on top of my game. I invest in my business for my family's future.
This is Yahoo Finance Plus. Trade like it's not your first rodeo. Dive deeper with advanced analytics. Trade smarter with in-depth research reports and unique data. Make confident moves and grab your portfolio by the horns with Yahoo Finance Plus.
She was a Silicon Valley superstar who promised to revolutionize healthcare with a single drop of blood.
This is a change in the world that I want to see.
Now her world has crumbled. Her company, once valued at $9 billion, shuttered, and Elizabeth Holmes herself facing criminal charges for fraud.
To a certain degree, she's a victim.
What went so terribly wrong?
Elizabeth Holmes was made possible by a broader culture.
Who or what is to blame?
The distinction between fraud and visionary is very subtle here.
Welcome back to the program. You can't celebrate the contributions of the Latinx and Hispanic community without bringing up music. To help us with that, we want to welcome the Vice President of Latin Music for Billboard and the author of Decoding Despacito, Leila Cobo, and Latin Grammy-nominated rapper and singer Anuel. Welcome to you both. We're so glad you're with us. Leila, let's start with you. Latin music has a history of crossover artists, from Santana to Gloria Estefan, Ricky Martin, Shakira, the list goes on. But recently, Latin music has really taken over the charts. In 2020, 7 of the 10 most streamed artists on YouTube are Latinx or Hispanic artists. What is fueling this popularity?
Well, many things. On the one hand, you have streaming, which is fantastic because it has democratized the process, so to speak. So we have the data from people all over the world who are streaming our music, and we see the representation from an entire continent that speaks Spanish. And in the States, more and more people are consuming music in Spanish, and of course in Europe. And then also we have, I think people are more open to music in other languages, particularly Spanish. And last but definitely not least, we have a lot of music, of Latin music being made, and a lot of really good music. So you see artists like Anuel with hits like China, or China in English, if you want to say it that way, which was just a massive global hit because it's a great song. And the fact that these great songs now can cross these barriers of entry thanks to streaming really shows you the appetite for this music around the world.
And well, and Latin music has evolved wildly over the years. You're a pioneer when it comes to Latin trap, for example. How has the evolution of Latin music as a genre changed over the years, and how has that impacted also the fan base of Latin music?
No, the change has been real big. Like back then, like right now, Spanish music, like you almost hear it at the same level, or it is at the same level as the American music. Now, when you're in the U.S. and the USA, back then it wasn't like that. So it's really big, and like the whole history has influenced a lot. And for me, it's super important. Like to just keep growing because right now we one of the like Spanish music is one of the music that everybody listens to the most around the world.
And how necessary, Anuel, is collaboration with other artists? I mean, you've collaborated with Shakira, Daddy Yankee. When we speak of hits like Despacito, Leila, for example, when Luis Fonsi and Justin Bieber got together, that really hit the charts in the US. So, Anuel, let's start with you. Talk to us about the importance of also collaborating with other artists and really making smash hits with them.
Yeah, it's always important through your career to always have collaborations. You can't always give the fans the same thing, and it's really important. Yeah, like for almost everybody's really important at the beginning of their career to have a lot of big collaborations.
Who were the people that helped you along the way when you started?
When I started the first, yeah, Osuna helped me a lot. Ñengo helped me a lot. A lot of Spanish, they always like Spanish artists. They helped me a lot in the beginning.
And Leila, what are your thoughts on a collaboration between artists?
It's crucial, and it's one of the things people often ask me why reggaeton and trap are so popular. And I think part of the reason is they collaborate, and they collaborate in a way that other genres of Latin music didn't before. You know, pop and tropical have learned from reggaeton and trap. And that collaboration is really essential on the one hand because it multiplies the artist's fan base, right? But on the other hand, because you're getting an artist who's established and he's giving a boost to an artist that's coming up. So this is a beautiful thing because everything else aside, it just keeps the genre alive and it keeps it going. Music needs new talent. And so these artists, instead of maybe competing with each other, even though they compete, but they're all helping each other. Yeah, and that just makes the genre stronger. It's like what is it? All tides raise all boats or whatever it is.
Yeah, we all professionals. We know we got to keep working together, keep making the Spanish industry keep growing.
And talk to me a little bit about the effects of social media, TikTok, YouTube on artists, especially during the pandemic. Anuel?
Yeah, everything changed all of a sudden with the pandemic hit. Like, yeah, the whole music, like the way everything works now changed. Now everything you already even TikTok counts as streamings. Like everything's been really different, and a lot of people adapted quick. Like a lot of people adapted quick. It hurt a lot of people too, but a lot of people adapted quick. You already know. So like I like it because in order to keep growing, we got to keep evolving too. So I like it.
Well, and Wade is a social king, so he knows all about that. And I think that he's an artist. He's a great example of an artist that's known how to use his social media first to connect with his fans who are very connected to his social media. And then he also likes, he's a provocateur in social media. I think so too. But your fans are loyal to you in social media. I am
entertaining. I just be entertaining, and it's something that I like to connect with people because since I started my career, I've always connected with my fans, and it's something that I look at it like through not like I've been evolving a lot, and I've been through different phases, and I've been through a phase that I stopped doing music for the streets and I focus on the commercial. Right now, the phase I'm at is really like I'm just being me in my music and like on everything. I'm just being me. Like people gonna listen to my music, gonna know me better every time they listen to me. So I'm just being me, being natural. That's who I am. I'm a big influence to the streets in Puerto Rico. I'm gonna keep working to keep growing. Like I bought a basketball team, let's say in Puerto Rico. Let's say one day, you never know, I could buy a basketball team in the NBA. I'm just working, trying to influence the streets in the best way possible. Like me, I never had no role model, so I'm really focusing on that. I'm really focusing on not just being a big rapper, being a big businessman. So it's something that step by step I'm going through it, and we making it little by little, and it's gonna be a big influence for the streets.
And can you mention to us also about your new single that's out?
My new single, it's going super. Yeah, it's going great. Like Seca, it's with Jay Cortez, and that's the new song that came out, and I got the last single I dropped, 23 questions, 23 preguntas. Both of them, they're really going great. After all the time, I took a little time off, so now both the three last songs I dropped, after not dropping a song like for 5 months, they all charting. They went top global in all the charts. So everything is going how it's supposed to go.
Well, best of luck to you. Anuel, Layla, thanks so much for joining us. And coming up next, we'll look at the financial impact of COVID-19 within the Latinx and Hispanic community and how you can make your money work for you. Stay with us.
On demand.
What is Peter?
Looking for Peter?
Peter? Peter!
He's hopping into your home.
He never behaves.
I've changed. I promise. Get ready for movie night.
Okay, I can't promise you in or you out.
Let's go.
You always take things too far.
It's a gift.
Peter Rabbit 2.
Rent or own the latest movies with Verizon Fios On Demand.
The best investment you can make is in yourself.
We are sliding more into the red.
There's still a lot of unknowns here.
I want to get to some breaking news.
This is a look into the future.
Another day, another record for the S&P 500 and the Dow.
I always look forward to doing this interview because it's like real stuff.
I always learn so much watching your show. Thank you.
I guess we're just as nerdy as you are.
Nobody can take it away from you.
She was a Silicon Valley superstar who promised to revolutionize healthcare with a single drop of blood.
This is a change in the world that I want to see.
Now her world has crumbled. Her company, once valued at $9 billion, shuttered, and Elizabeth Holmes herself facing criminal charges for fraud.
To a certain degree, she's a victim.
What went so terribly wrong?
Elizabeth Holmes was made possible by a broader culture.
Who or what is to blame?
The distinction between fraud and visionary is very subtle here.
Wild. I'm gonna call you Spirit.
See the all-new movie that has families cheering for more.
Spirit. Spirit. Let's run! I smell rule breaking. No!
Spirit Untamed, the movie, is spectacular and the perfect family film.
I made us something. When did you have the time? There's always time for friendship-based crafting.
Spirit Untamed.
Rent or own the latest movies with Verizon Fios On Demand.
Welcome back to the program. For our last segment, we thought it would be important to look at the financial impact the pandemic has had on the Latinx and Hispanic community. I'm joined now by the founder of Misinformed Latina, Diana Pinedo, chair of Community Relations for Latina Professionals, Danelis Padron, and the founder of Delianne the Money Coach, Delianne Barros. Thank you all for joining us. Delianne, let's start with you. Research shows that COVID-19 has really disproportionately affected the Latinx and Hispanic population, particularly Latinx and Hispanic women. Why do you think that this group has been overwhelmingly impacted?
I think it's because we have taken such a forefront in building
wealth through entrepreneurship, through small businesses, and we do take up a huge portion of the workplace, especially in lower income jobs. And so it is not surprising that that has been the community that's been impacted the most. And unfortunately, because Latinos are not investing in the stock market as much as other communities, they have felt the impact in their wealth more because their businesses are suffering, whereas the stock market has continued to grow and thrive. But because they're not taking advantage of that wealth building machine, they are losing out on balancing some of that loss with investing. And so they have felt it much more deeply than other communities.
Diana, another statistic that really jumped off the page for me was this Pew Research in a survey prior to COVID, asking Latinx and Hispanic parents if their children would be better off financially than they are, and less than half, or 46%, said yes. I want to ask you, do you think the pandemic has slowed down that expectation, and how can we improve the generational wealth of Latino and Hispanic communities?
Yeah, well, I don't think that the pandemic has slowed anything down. And I think the way we can change that is information. I think it's educating. I think it's informing. I think it's ensuring that these resources are available from the college level to the familial level. It's how are we ensuring that we're educating our children on ways to properly save, budget, pay off debts, and invest. And I think that last point is probably the biggest point because it's how you are truly going to develop generational wealth. And so, what are ways in which we are actually educating our community about these things? And if their families don't know, then there has to be another way to teach them. And I really think that's when either college comes along or a lot of these wonderful finance educators and coaches are teaching and offering the information, and that we're being much more mindful and intentional about money in a way we've never been before.
And Danelis, Latinx and Hispanic communities have really been drivers of the American economy. You have the size of the U.S. Latino market measured by GDP. It was $2.6 trillion in 2018, meaning if the U.S. Latino market were its own country, it would be the 8th largest economy of the world. So how do we set up systems to help the communities themselves to benefit from the money that's being spent?
Yes, I mean, that's a great question. And as you mentioned, according to a Morgan Stanley study, you're actually seeing an 8.7% growth within the Latino GDP. And that means that we're going 4.5 times faster than other demographics. So we have a very strong collective power. One way that we can continue to advance as a community, I believe, is coming together and sharing knowledge, sharing information. There is a big stigma around talking about our finances when it comes to the Latino community. We are very friendly, but there are just some things that we don't talk about, and that's money. And so I would encourage us, our families, our friends, to have those trusted individuals that you talk to about money, and also search for events. There's a lot of networks that are coming together and providing financial education. So I think it's very important for us to invest in our self-development and to stay informed in how we can continue to grow our funds, protect our families, build generational wealth. We have a great power, not only as a collective, but also as individuals. So it's up to us to make the best of that.
And Delianne, I'm curious on your thoughts on how housing has become so expensive for Latinx and Hispanics. I mean, this is part of the generational wealth as well, right? They like to own their properties or at least be able to rent comfortably. So how do we help Hispanics, Latinx to be able to own their own property or rent comfortably?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point because we are a population that has focused on home ownership for the most part, right? In the last 10 years, 50% of home ownership has grown because of the Latin community. So we have focused a lot of our wealth in home ownership, but we have over concentrated in that area. So like I said before, like we do need to diversify where we put our wealth, and that includes investing in addition to home ownership, but also the pressure to own, especially now with home ownership being so expensive and the entry being so high because not everybody can put together a down payment. There's no reason to feel guilty or embarrassed about renting. I myself rent. I've always enjoyed the flexibility of renting, and I think that there's this stigma with renting. Maybe something like you're not successful enough, or you're not building wealth if you're renting. You're throwing money away, and that is not the case, right? Because many people do end up overbuying and overextending themselves just for the sake of calling themselves homeowners. And so putting your paycheck, your entire paycheck into your home to the point where you're living paycheck to paycheck just so you can meet that mortgage, that's no way to build wealth either. So we want to find a balance. And if that means renting and renting below your means so that you can give yourself some breathing room, there's nothing wrong with that.
And Diana, do you have any thoughts on how Latinos and Hispanic and Latinx people can grow their resources, their funds in this time when they're seeing rising prices at grocery stores, rising prices for almost everything that you go to buy, and their wages aren't necessarily keeping up with those prices?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my biggest tip is understanding other income streams. I think what we often do in the Latino community is that we really push our children to have a career in an X profession, right? Which is fine. We go to school, we get a degree, and we get a job. But there is a threshold oftentimes in just the typical 9 to 5. Although fantastic and great, you're going to hit a certain threshold that you may not be able to move up in terms of your salary. And so what are other ways to think about bringing in income? And I think in a world, in a gig economy, you can learn any trade. I mean, really, you can learn about anything and then start to charge to make a little money, whether it's products or services. I think that's a really great way. There's so many means now, right? There's Instacart and there's Uber and there is TaskRabbit. There's just all these ways to just make a little extra cash, I think is one way to start getting extra money. And of course, it's about investing your money. Whatever other money that you're making, I would put aside some of it for investment purposes, and of course, others to make up for inflation. I think it's a systemic problem that needs to be fixed. And that doesn't just directly affect the Latinx and Hispanic community, although I'm pretty sure more so underrepresented communities get affected by this. But this is a really big problem that inflation has gone up so high and wages has not risen really at the rate of inflation. And so I think it's really about figuring out how to diversify your income.
I want to thank all of our guests for their time today, as well as you for joining us today to celebrate the rich heritage of the Latinx and Hispanic community. To continue the conversation, check out yahoo.com/somos. Hasta pronto.
Yahoo Plus Tech is an all-new way to set up, sync, support, and protect your eligible home tech, all under one simple plan. Cracks, spills, and mechanical failures? You're covered. For all your other tech issues, Assurian experts are here for you 24/7 to solve problems and help you do more with tech, like secure your home network, understand parental controls, or choose the right streaming device. We can even help you decide what to buy next based on your exact needs. With Yahoo Plus Tech, you can leave your tech troubles at the door.
I'm just all about, living life to the fullest. Wherever I play, I go big. In the stadium or Yahoo Fantasy.
Draft day, baby. You're going down this year, my friend. First pick right here. Gutless. Did you even want to win this year?
With the third pick, Team Juju selects.
Bro.
You're a fourth-round pick at best.
Man, your season's over. You're done.
Yeah, keep talking.
Join us for the Yahoo Finance All Markets Summit Plus, Crypto Investing, September 27th at 12 Eastern. From Bitcoin to XRP, we're decrypting crypto, what it is, how it works, and how to get started. We're cutting through the hype to cover the hottest happenings in crypto. No more FOMO, no more FUD. The Yahoo Finance All Markets Summit Plus, Crypto Investing, Monday, September 27th at 12 Eastern.
Who are these vagabonds, and what have they done with my children?
I'm Peter Pan. And I'm Alice from Wonderland.
We can all use a little extra courage now and then.
It's not time to grow up.
Come away, rated PG.
Rent or own the latest movies with Verizon Fios On Demand.